Welcome everyone to this webinar. We lost count a long time ago how many webinars there are, but I think it's over 130, right? Sets, 130 sets. Anyway, thank you for being here. I would like to start with a description of what is energy healing for the new people, and then follow that with 3 minutes of silence for all of us, prayer of gratitude, the descriptions for all of you old timers too. All of you guys have been with me for a while too. Yeah. 3 minutes of silence, prayer of gratitude, recap of yesterday, and then diving into today's session. And as promised, I would start with questions because they tend to build up in the first one. I answer as many as I can, but it's good to get to all of them. I really like to address your questions, because that's really what's relevant and reflection of where the collective is. And so much of what we're doing in these webinars is sort of a collective process. So it has a sort of dynamic individual and collective element to it. So energy healing is a technology, mental technology, for focusing attention in a way that produces beneficial results for the body. And a lot of different people practice energy healing. There's no standard in the industry. And I was talking with one energy healer yesterday, and or 2 days ago, and the way she does it, she douses, and then she recommends herbs and oils. So, and she's very knowledgeable about herbs and oils, which is lovely. And indeed a lovely person with a lot of intuition and knowledge of Jyotish as well. So, quite a delight. But the point is that we're all different, a little different. So partly what I'm describing to you is the way I am presenting energy healing to you. It's different from the way other people do it in their own way. So the premise behind this energy healing is that we can use any cue from the environment to activate or catalyze the healing process. So you could use pharmaceutical drugs and surgery, or herbs and Jyotish, and homeopathics, and essential oils and crystals. And there are lots of things that we could pick up from the environment and say, oh, I'm going to use this. This thing is I'm looking over it. Do I have a crystal? I've got some little crystals. This crystal is going to heal me. I'm going to put it right here. It's going to make me feel better. And that can happen. That works. But how do you actually feel better? What actually makes you feel better is that instrument, or that cue from the environment, has given your consciousness permission, has given you permission to use your consciousness to heal yourself. Really, in the end, consciousness heals. Consciousness also makes us sick. So yeah, so what we're doing inside at the deep levels, and we could call those the subconscious and unconscious levels of the mind, what we're doing deep inside, and levels of which we are unaware, can influence or affect the health. However, energy healing is a process that opens the pathway to those deeper levels of the field of consciousness, of the field of self, to reveal and uncover what are those precise mechanics by which consciousness affects the body. Right? Because if you know how it works, suddenly you become a magician. and it's good to be in that place. Just like, we were talking the other day, if this isn't a cell phone, this is just a recording device. But, if you took something like this back 500 years and said, hey, check this out, people would think, oh, that person's a magician. Burn them at the stake. No, but sorry, God, I'm in a terrible... What's wrong with me today? Anyway, sorry, I'm in a kind of goofy mood. But anyway, the point is that things only seem magical or impossible if you don't understand the trick behind it. But there is a trick behind the way that we manifest the entire universe with our consciousness. that we manifest our reality with our consciousness. There are mechanics there. And energy healing, as I understand it, as I am presenting it to you, thank you for being with me, is to reveal those mechanics. Because once the mechanics are revealed, then it's no secret. There are batteries in this thing. That's the secret, right? Figure out the secret. Then all of a sudden, it doesn't seem so mysterious anymore. And it may still seem mysterious to other people, but that's okay. Everybody comes to these points when they are ready, and we are forging ahead in the development and evolution of humanity and ourselves as expressions of the divine in this world. We're forging ahead with it, in spite of what's going on in the news and in spite of what's going on everywhere and with everything. Because someone's got to do it, and because it's a joy, and we just have an hour. So let's. Okay. That didn't go very much into the mechanics, but as you know, this webinar is about that. So we will talk about the mechanics after our 3 minutes of silence, but we'll have our 3 minutes of silence now. I'll ask you to close the eyes. I will close my microphone and turn on my clock. And then after 3 minutes, I'll ask you to open the eyes, and then don't open the eyes right away. Take a minute, because the more silence we come forth, the more gently and delicately we emerge from that silence, the more of the value of the silence we bring with us into the material field. And as you will soon see, and why I have this picture of water behind me, is that the silence is the ocean of silence within all of us is the source of creation. And our awareness, which is what we use, it's like our big tool that we use in energy healing, that we focus in on the parts that hurt and are uncomfortable. That is focusing source material on that part. So it's good to kind of just clue in and connect up with that source of creation for a few minutes anyway. Okay, thank you for bearing with me through all the explanations. I will now mute my microphone. Let's close our eyes. Thank you. Let's take a few moments before opening the eyes. Thank you to the source of creation for being everything. Thank you for being everyone here live in lifetime in this webinar, and everybody who will join us at a later time on the recordings. Thank you to everyone's ancestry. Thank you to that precious tradition of wisdom that connects the absolute, unbounded, infinite ocean of being and bliss with the eternally unfolding field of relative expression. Thank you for our webinar. May this time be used in the most valuable, meaningful, powerful, successful way for each one of you. And thank you all for being with me and for the opportunity to be here and to do this work, because it is a joy to be of service. Thank you. All right. What did we talk about yesterday? Well, there was a big healing in the middle of yesterday's session. And let's see. I started out by putting the quality of love and compassion in the context of energy healing and talked about Dharma. And Dharma, for those of you who are new to that concept, is a Vedic term that means the sustainer of the universe, essentially. And Dharma has these four parts: truth, compassion, or love and compassion, orderliness, and the ability to let go. And so we talked about those for a while, and how the love and compassion element is what moves the truth. It moves the truth to purify the being, the physiology, so that healing happens, evolution happens, growth happens. And we talked for a little while, as I recall, about the relationship between consciousness and the body, because there's a sort of dialogue or a give and take that's occurring between consciousness and the body all the time. And the challenges that we face can be reframed and identified or understood as cues that there's an area of the physiology that feels overwhelmed. I mean, really, that's what stress is. It's overwhelm in the system. And no matter which part of the body falls ill, there's going to be a nervous system component, because the nervous system is through and through the whole body. Also, the circulatory system is through and through the whole body, right? We did a lot of healings also that were down more at the cellular, subcellular level yesterday. So again, through and through the whole body, systemic work. But this overwhelm, dealing with overwhelm, upgrading our ability to handle the way nature functions, essentially, because this overwhelm is just part of nature. Like that was, I think, one of the important points that came out yesterday, was that the way the creation unfolds is that the one wholeness, the one immutable, unbounded, qualityless, unmanifest one rises up. It starts to rise up in waves of expression. And it needs, the reason why is it doing it? It's doing that so it can evolve. So it evolves through this cycle where it rises up in waves of expression, and then it finds itself within that expression, and then the whole thing collapses back to home again. So it makes a cycle. And in order for the one to evolve effectively in a way that suits it, not us, it's suiting this, well, we are also part of it, obviously, but anyway, to suit itself, it rises up and it pushes boundaries and limitations at the material level, at the level of expression. We get pushed. So our physiology is capable of handling a certain amount of experience at any given moment. And what causes stress or overwhelm in the system are those moments when what the experience is like bringing too much information. It's overloading the circuitry, essentially, which is why I mentioned the nervous system. And we did healings for the nervous system, as I recall, in the autonomic nervous system, pretty sure, and the heart energy center. Yeah. Oh, we did healings for the abdomen and the pelvic region and all the systems and organs in that part of the body as well. Because that was when I started diving into the healing. Like that's where I was noticing the overwhelm particularly, at least yesterday. So we'll see what happens today. Anyway, the system gets overwhelmed. And it gets overwhelmed because it's the nature of the absolute to feed momentum into the manifestation process, right? So like we've got absolute unmanifest being, it starts to rise up in a little wave of intention. Oh, I'm going to be something, I'm going to express myself. And this momentum of this an infinite field of infinite resources down here in the field of unmanifest being. And so all that infinite resource builds up behind that wave of intention. And so there's a lot of good momentum behind it, and it's taking form and it's taking form. It's taking more and more concrete forms, more and more specified forms like that can come all the way up to the physical material level, and it's taking forms as our body, right? But then at some point, the form, the physical form is like, whoa, this wave of momentum is like a little bit too much. I don't want to, I need to pull back. I need to pull back. And the wave of momentum creates the experience to the point that our experience is that we lose the connection to wholeness. The experience becomes so overshadowing. It becomes so dominating in the field of the senses that we forget, oh yeah, wait, I'm actually divine being. Oh, and this is actually the wave of divine being expressing itself. The minute that anchor to wholeness is lost is the minute that the momentum is lost, right? Because the momentum is coming from the source of creation. So the minute that we lose that anchor, the momentum falls out the bottom, the physiology's feeling overwhelmed. When the anchor to the momentum falls out, then there's this feeling of, oh, I'm no longer supported here. And the experience of being separate from wholeness ensues, comes along, we could say. The experience of being separate from wholeness comes along. We're never really separate from wholeness, but wholeness is trying to grow. So it pushes to its limit. It pushes to the limit that the physiology can bear. And then the physiology has to cope. And that's what brings us into this. And sometimes that physiology is your physical body, and sometimes it's the environment or situations and circumstances or relationships. How much can a relationship bear, right? So nature's doing that in order for it to grow. And our role as humans is to be present with that experience and then be the instrument by which the divine illuminates what just happened. It illuminates. We illuminate. Okay, so when that overwhelmed thing happens, we feel pain, right? So then awareness goes to where the pain is, because that's what awareness does. That's what pain does, is it draws our awareness like a magnet, right? And as awareness goes there, that's wholeness going. That's wholeness coming back and going, oh, no, 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 you didn't lose me. I'm still here. That's the source of creation going, oh, this little piece is feeling a little separate and it's feeling pain. Wait, awareness comes in. The pain attracts the awareness and the awareness comes in. And that's wholeness coming in. That's totality coming in. And when totality comes in, it comes in like a light and it illuminates whatever was the problem in that area. And we see it. And we are wired up as human beings to be resourceful and clever and interesting and interested, and having the type of awareness that we can like penetrate into those experiences. We can say, I would like to make something that would record my voice. Now, how would I do that? And then somebody figures it out, right? So this is the role that we play. We have this like really important role. You could think of us like glue. Humans were like glue, right? The pieces, the wholeness of creation is rising up to the surface, and it's shattering into many, many pieces, right? It's fracturing into so many pieces, and the pieces start to push toward the edge of their capability to even handle their own existence. And so they start to feel separated and in pain. And then as humans, the pain attracts our attention. And then we find ways of coping. That's what we do. We find ways of coping. And as we navigate through the coping experience of coping with situations and circumstances, we reestablish wholeness with that piece of its own nature that had temporarily been lost, had got temporarily unhinged from the anchor of wholeness. And it's anchor to wholeness, I could say. And so nothing is ever lost for very long. Even that loss is never really, really outside the ocean of totality, because the ocean of totality is in everything, even the worst moments. But we are there also at the worst moments, and we are designed to be able to deal with those, which is really interesting. And it's our gift. It's the gift that we give to the creation, is that we can take even lemons and make lemonade. We can take the worst of situations and find creative ways of reconnecting back to wholeness. And we do that at a conscious level. We also do it at unconscious and subconscious levels. And obviously, like every cell in our body is doing that, every organ, every system. And really, being is doing it. Being is doing it through us. We are the instrument. We are the instrument through which that process occurs. And we are beautiful to being for that reason. You are beautiful. You are really beautiful. But as we all know, sometimes that process is easier and sometimes it's harder. And that gets us to our questions. So let's, I've already talked for half an hour. I can't even believe it. 25 minutes. Let me take a drink of my tea. Okay. So let's look at some of these questions and see what's up. I think it actually ties into this question. So here is a very darling person. Thank you for being here. With long-term health condition that stretches over decades. So it's the marathon ride right there. It's sometimes challenging to feel the love and compassion from the divine and even for ourselves. Therefore, we are left to fall back upon faith, hope, and trust. I have heard you speak of these qualities often in the recent weeks. Yes, I was discussing Hildegard von Bingen last night, her Ordo, sorry, it's backwards to me, Ordo, on the virtues, faith, hope, and trust are all virtues, all the virtues. Yeah, in recent weeks, I was talking about them. because I was exposed, and as being essential for healing. And yet sometimes these are even harder to hold on to. Yeah, I agree. It's, when it feels like such a marathon run, can we please do healing that helps cultivate, integrate, and embody faith, hope, and trust? Thank you. The virtues are divine. They exist with or without us. And here I feel such a privilege to speak on behalf of the way I understand it and on behalf of the way it is understood from a, we could say, cosmic level. So the virtues are divine and they exist with or without us. It is a choice to stay close to them or not. Now, I know for some of you, the health challenges that you experience can give rise to an inability to sleep well. And one of the keys for staying close to the virtues is also to stay rested. So when the rest isn't there at night, it's necessary to find the rest in other ways. Everybody's receiving a download. Clearing sleep and dream deprivation from the astral body, astral through etheric, astral through physical level of the body. Sometimes this feels like a wave, like a washing, like washing with the light of robust balance in the body. It washes down over the body and it washes out the fatigue, the sleep and dream deprivation from the system. It's like, I would say, it's a light medicine. So created at the causal level of the physiology that promotes the production of ADP, right? Adenosine triphosphate. It sort of helps the cells create that, because that's the main thing that we get during our sleep, right? Now, of course, sleep is one way to get rest. Meditation is another way to get rest. And then there are those moments, those little moments that fall between the other moments, between the breaths. Those moments are also moments of intense and profound rest. You can create them for yourself. This is what the download's really about. It's really about how does a soul find the core of its ability to, the soul finds the core of rest within itself so that the experience can be reproduced for the physiology. Sometimes when these downloads come in, they're so ancient. There's something that people have been using for tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of years. Some cultures had words for them, had names for them, had names for the different light medicines, had names for the different procedures that one can self-create. Your ability to do this is integrating. For anybody, even those of you who get good rest at night, for everybody, just because it never hurts to be a little more rested. It's in the nervous system. It's a shift in the nervous system. And I would say autonomic nervous system, but it doesn't seem to be the autonomic nervous system this time. I mean, the autonomic nervous system is included. It's very systemic, though, through the whole nervous system. That ability to self-create the state of absolute rest. The body just loves it. And I'm seeing in the group that as that happens, the heart expands too. The heart feels like, oh, how lovely. What a joy. Thank you. Thank you, me. Thank you to you. Thank you to you. Because you're the one who does it for you. But as you do it for you, you honor and echo those of the past who have also been there and done that. It is creating at the astral level, because it's, remember I said astral through physical level. At the astral level, it's fortifying connections to those great individuals of the past and those great civilizations in the past, where this ability was commonplace, accepted by everyone. Maybe not by everyone. It looks like within the history, the story of the history of Earth, at any given time, the spectrum of souls on the evolutionary journey, the spiritual evolutionary journey, was varying degrees of that spectrum, from very, very enlightened to very, very asleep, very awake, very asleep, or however you want to say it. But those individuals of the past that understood that, you understand. It's so much of energy healing is about just knowing that something is available to you, right? Just like knowing what are your resources, knowing what are your tools. It's a connecting to the eternal nature of one's own self and integrating that. So I guess, my dearest, in your question, cultivating and integrating and embodying faith, hope, and trust, what we're really doing is we're including faith, hope, and trust in the divine value of our own nature, one's own nature. That it's, I guess it became a little bit more broad. The healing became a little more broad, that it encompasses faith, hope, and trust. It encompasses love, compassion, mercy, forgiveness, gratitude. But it's really creating the condition within one's own physiology that puts you in a space where all of those virtues are accessible simultaneously. In Hildegard, I talk quite a bit about, not hugely longly, it wasn't the biggest part of yesterday, but a little bit about Hildegard von Bingen and this very nice ordo that she created. 90-minute Gregorian chant, basically, about the virtues, but it was also a story of the evolution, the spiritual evolution of the soul. The whole thing, she tried to encapsulate or incorporate the entire story of the way the soul evolves and the way the individual experiences coming to God through the activation or enlivenment of the virtues. That was an interesting part from yesterday too, because I talked about a new experience that's come up recently, that came up while I was there listening to that. But on this note, someone also asked this question about Hildegard and the music. So as long as we're kind of moving in that direction, we shall go here. Just curious if you mean that we can find our own vehicle to access the fine feeling, or if Hildegard von Bingen's music, because it was composed for healing, is unique to offering this type of transcendence. Once the nervous system gets used to the experience, anything is the vehicle. I remember Maharishi used to say, even the smell of a rotten bus, could be that impulse from the environment that shoots a person into their enlightened state. However, what's lovely about Hildegard's work is that she intended it to be a transformational experience for those both who performed it, and it's performed in a group with different singers in the group being the different virtues, and one being the soul and one being the devil, and so like that. But also because my experience is that for me, and this is why I presented my experience yesterday in a little more detail, was that it started with the experience of love. And it was like, how far can the love stretch? How full of love can my heart become? And how full of compassion and love? How, can it become so full that I am overwhelmed and I lose my connection to the divine? Well, at that time, it certainly didn't. I mean, I'm open, God, I'm open for that experience if that's what I'm meant to experience. But, and I definitely have had that experience often when I was grieving, right? Grieving the loss of a loved one. It's like all the love that you ever loved them in the whole life that you spent with that person. It's like it comes back and you experience it all at once. It can be quite an intense thing. Anyway, speaking of which, we're going to move on to also these other questions. But the point, coming back to this beautiful question, is that the first time I had that experience, and just to reiterate for those of you who weren't here yesterday, it was the experience of feeling the love so big and so full. It felt as if there was no more room in my heart. It was infinite love was there. So then I thought, well, then it just needs to radiate out to the creation. So it radiated out as far out as it could go to the ends of the universe. And then I thought, well, it's not overwhelming me yet. I still feel anchored to being here. And I gave the music and the experience of being with the divine work of this lovely, amazing woman who lived 1,000 years ago, that the music was kind of helping keep me anchored. It felt like that to me, that the music was kind of acting like an anchor. Because it was fascinating. And I was definitely, my senses of perception and the gross material were focusing on this gross material thing that was, I don't mean gross like gross, yucky. I mean like physical material thing, which was the music, which I was hearing. But at the same time, the music was divine. So it's like the anchor was not lost. So at that point, I'm like, well, where do you go from here? And the answer came, you go in. And the feeling of love became finer and finer and finer and finer. And I knew as that was happening, my physiology was also becoming, my nervous system was working around it. It was adapting, and my epigenome was responding epigenetically to this experience of the love becoming finer, 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 finer. And then it became so fine that I couldn't recognize it as love. It wasn't love. It was just, the word I used yesterday was amness, but it wasn't the unmanifest amness of the eternal field of qualityless being. It was a manifest form, but it was so fine, it was so abstract that it wasn't recognizable as anything recognizable. It was really fine. And then it went finer. And I realized that it can go to infinite degrees of fineness without ever becoming completely unmanifest. It was such a revelation. And as I mentioned yesterday, that's where I found her. I found Hildegard von Bingen hanging out there in that region of consciousness. It was like, whoa, here you are. But of course, at that region, it's all the self. One finds oneself. But and we had a jolly good time, I'll tell you. Anyway, I would say the first vehicle is probably love. At least for me, that was the vehicle, was the feeling. It was the feeling of love was really the vehicle, less than it was the music. The music was there. I hope, yeah, that puts the music in perspective for you, for your question. The music was there as just an instrument to, for me to be checking that I was not overwhelmed and that it was so blissful. It was so blissful. It was hard for the physiology, the nervous system to become overwhelmed in a place like that. It was just so beautiful. It smooths, the music was like smoothing, right? It was the fact that I was putting my attention there was facilitating the refinement process. That's what it was. the music acts as an instrument to refine the nervous system. So anything that refines, and you can have refinement from any of the 5 senses of perception. So like unbelievably delicious food, or some beautiful aromatherapies, like energy healers use aromatherapies, or beautiful art or music or touch, or even we can transcend from the intellect and the mind as well. I have a blog post on my website, 112-point matrix. Tom, you can add that as a link. I mean, I know I've sent some of this stuff to you guys 1,000 times, but anyway, for those who are new, if you're interested, it's all laid out there. It's a system. That experience that I just described was offered as a sort of deep healing in yesterday's session. All of you will receive the recording. Do check it out if you're interested in taking that dive and stabilizing and establishing that experience for yourself. Okay, now let's see, we went from that. Ah, yes, death. So this question is, recently my brother-in-law's cousin died from an accident on the road. He left 2 young children and wife, parents, many relatives in deep sorrow. My question is why someone dies suddenly, and is it the soul's choice when entering this lifetime? Can we do healing for souls who died suddenly and have no time to say goodbye to their family? My wish is that everyone dies peacefully and gets to prepare for leaving this Mother Earth. What a beautiful heart. Her wish for everyone, her wish for the whole world. It's so sweet. It is always a choice on the level of the higher self, not on the level of individual self. If the self is not fully integrated with divine source of creation, then it feels as if it comes as a shocking moment of experience and out of control. Talk about overwhelming the system, right? Boy, that experience, it overwhelms it all the way out of existence. However, it's not always decided in the spirit world before coming to this world. Sometimes there are cues, and my experience working across the veil in energy healing is that we have a lot more autonomy than we think we do. And sometimes, of course, there are certain things that are chosen and selected in the spirit world before coming. And sometimes a very specific death is chosen. But anything can be renegotiated. You can renegotiate all of these things. Maybe you choose to take on a certain amount of karma in this lifetime, and it just feels like you get into it and you realize, oh, I bit off more than I can chew. This is no good. You can go back and renegotiate. There are regions of the causal body that are responsible for the way your karma shows up. And they have a feel to them. All the regions of the causal body. And for those who are not familiar with causal body, because that's a whole, I've done several webinars just on the causal body. So it's it's a big topic. Tom, can we add the link to the causal body? And it is a big topic, too much to go into here, but it is that critical level of the field of consciousness where the magic really happens, where the mechanics unfold, actually. So here in my diagram here, it's in the gap here between the unmanifest ocean of pure being and the whole manifest field of creation. Right there in that gap is where we encounter the causal region. Oh, and that's where that exercise I just gave you, where that download that just came in for everybody about going to the finest, to such a fine level of consciousness that even the qualities are unrecognizable. That's where it all happens, guys. So it's a nice thing to possess, to wrap one's experience around. It's useful. It's very useful. Okay. Yeah, it can be renegotiated. And when I looked into the situation with your brother-in-law's cousin, I felt very strongly that his love for his children drove him to take a position in relationship to them where he sees deeply into all the details of their nature, of their personalities, of their experiences in school. There's a lot that parents miss. There's a lot to being a parent. And anytime a loved one dies, they go into a place of being unconfined by their physiologies, being unconfined by space and time, and are absolutely in a position to do well by their loved ones. And I do feel that he stepped out so that he could, in a sense, step in. He stepped out of his physical body and being there for his kids. Now, of course, trying to tell the kids that's like, they're not going to get it. They're not going to get it. But what they will get is they will get guidance, inner guidance, that they will be able to listen to once they kind of get through their grief. And they have to get through their anger as well, because it's going to feel like being abandoned, which it kind of was being abandoned. But I mean, from his perspective, he realizes he hasn't abandoned them. But from their perspective, they feel abandoned. And there is likely to be some resentment or anger or frustration over the situation. And of course, because of the circumstance, it's not like they're really going to really blame him on the one hand. But on the other hand, as they go through the grieving process, they're going to have to go through the anger phase of the healing process, of the grieving process. And it won't be until after they get through the anger phase of the grieving process that they will start to be able to receive the blessings, his blessings, that he can help to guide them. And the guidance is experienced as one's own inner guidance, essentially. It's like ideas and thoughts. And, I think today I am going to stay home, something like that. I have a dear client in who lost the mom of the family, was lost when the boys were really young, when the family was really young. And the boys found it very difficult to go to school after that. They were teenagers. They found it very difficult. But it just so happened that they didn't go to school at a time when certain things were happening in the school that would have been extremely damaging to them, and they avoided it. So it was very interesting that it played out like that. And they're smart and they're capable and they're moving forward with their lives, right? And they're, they can get the GED or whatever. You see what I'm saying? It's like, she left at a time that she, in a sense, she saved them, in a sense, from what could have been a very unfortunate unfolding of their lives in directions that would not have been good for their evolution. So parents do that sometimes. Yeah. Soul's choice, yes. Not necessarily when entering this lifetime, but sometimes it can be. Can we do healing for souls who died suddenly and have no time to say goodbye to family? I'll tell you this. He's okay. He's pretty good, actually. I mean, of course, it's sudden and it's a pinch. There's a little pinchy aspect, but the biggest pinch is watching the family struggle, because the space of the soul is very nice. And I do appreciate you asking about people dying suddenly, because as we all know, that's a thing. It wasn't a thing before, and now it is a thing. That it's not that uncommon for people to die suddenly these days. And because that's a delicate topic, I will not speak further upon it, but we can say that being unfettered or unconstrained by the human physiology, allows truth to flow and light, light to flow really, really nicely in a very kind of unconstrained way. And there's something deeply, deeply comforting about that truth and light. And so the soul finds itself in a place of deep comfort. And if the death was traumatic, the soul will find its way into the source of creation. It'll take a deep, 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 deep diving rest into being and rejuvenate and process. And soul will even go back and revisit the moment of death and bless its own body, bless it and help it and thank it and comfort it for the suffering that it has to go through. It's very sweet. It's very sweet. The way the universe is constructed is actually very compassionate. It's just that here in our human form, because of those dynamics that I kind of laid out earlier, it doesn't always feel very easy for us. But it really is the overall thrust of the manifestation of this universe is deeply, deeply compassionate and loving. And if it weren't, the whole universe would just implode. Right? I mean, there wouldn't be a universe. If there was any kind of malevolence there wouldn't be a universe, because the malevolence would spread all over and would just take everything out. So there's a very, very deep love and sweetness that's there for all. It would be nice if everybody died peacefully, but I don't know that everybody is necessarily destined to do that for their highest evolution. But may as many people die peacefully as possible. Thank you for your beautiful question. I'd like to circle back now, so that I finished all the questions from yesterday. This question is, I'm feeling my mother's blessings often, even though she passed away 15 years ago. Bless you. My father passed away 15 years ago too. And I could hardly believe it when I realized the other day it's been 15 years. I wonder if, as a collective, we can say thank you to our mother's compassion, their unremembered acts of kindness and love, to quote Wordsworth, and do a healing as well for mothers and their relationship with their children. Mothers take responsibility for everything. They feel it. They feel a responsibility for everything, even if the child came in with some karma that it's working out and so. The mother always feels the full weight of that responsibility of whatever happens. But the mother doesn't necessarily, sometimes I suppose they do, but for the most part, doesn't take credit for the healthy, balanced well-being of their children, mental, physical, and emotional well-being. But that's what the mother wants. She just wants that mental, physical, and emotional well-being balanced. Compassion of a mother's heart is born of love, because she sees the best in the child. She sees the potential. She sees the divine potential. She sees the connection to the divine, because I'll tell you, you can't birth a baby, even if it's a C-section or whatever. You can't bring a baby into this world without diving into the field of life itself, the source of creation, and escorting that child's soul back across the veil. So the mother absolutely knows the child's connection to the absolute. Even if she doesn't know her own connection to the absolute consciously, on some level, she always knows her child's connection to the absolute. And that knowledge, that knowledge harbored safe in her loving heart, is the golden thread that keeps that child growing and developing and evolving toward their highest potential. It's a beautiful thing. And the more conscious a mother is of that, the more effective she can be in being the child's first teacher, in being the comforter and the nurturer and the supporter and the sustainer of that child's life. So the principle is to reawaken that moment. And for a lot of women, it was absolutely an overwhelming moment. Not always, because I'm thinking of the moment of birth. The moment of birth, when the mother's soul goes across the veil and finds the child and brings the child back. Sometimes women are having a C-section or drugged up or something. But awakening that moment and the spiritual power of a woman to bring a child into this world, we're enlivening it through that moment. And for those of you who didn't have children, no worries, because all of us are literally birthing the universe around us constantly. That's really, we are the instruments. We are the instruments through which the universe is birthed into this level of reality, this physical material level of reality. So we can still find that sacred connection to the absolute and the manifesting, the birthing process of the absolute, even if you're a dude. We all have that in us. We all have it in us. And for those who are in male bodies in this lifetime, you may very well have been in a female. Most likely, we try them all. We try all the bodies at some point or another. So the healthy ones, the unhealthy ones, the ones that live long lives, the ones that live short lives, the male, the female, all of them, all of them. We all have that experience embedded in our long-term memory, in the soul's memory, in the area where our souls connect to the Akashic record, which is in the astral body. So there in the astral body, there's a thread. There's a specific connection to the birthing process. Golden thread. And it contains the memory of moving across the veil, staying in your physical body, moving across the veil, finding that soul and escorting it back, just like you would your heart's deepest desire, right? Your intention for this lifetime, your ability to heal. It feels like it's humming. It's humming in the chord of light. It's humming in that thread that runs right through the whole body, from the crown of the body all the way through to the source of creation, the center of the universe. Tom, chord of light added to the links. Thank you, sweetheart. It's a function, right? It's a function, not a form. To go across the veil, to pick up, meet the baby's soul and bring it back like that, that's a function. So the function has an energy signature, just like forms have energy signatures. And that function is activating and awakening within all of us. It's love. It's the love in the mother's heart that allows her to stay anchored to her own life when she makes that move. It's the love for life. It's the love for life itself. And sometimes when mothers don't make it through the birthing process, it's not that they didn't love their baby. but it's more like that last experience I was explaining about how sometimes the mother has to be less in her body in order to produce the most beneficial and positive effects for her children. It can happen. Thank you to all the mothers. Let's just take a moment with all of us as a collective and just say thank you to mothers, all mothers, the mother within all of us, the mother of creation, the mothers, our mothers, and our mothers' mothers, and our female lineage. May they all be blessed. May our ability to bless our female lineage support and uplift and uphold them so that they may continue to evolve and come forward in a way which is an expression of their highest divine nature. Thank you for that beautiful question. All right, as we navigate the paths to self-love, in order to catalyze the healing process, how do we strike the balance between petitionary prayers? This is a great question. Petitionary prayers on our behalf with the idea of thy will be done. The heart wants to surrender to the healing process at times, thy will be done. And at other times, especially if one is suffering, petitionary prayers may arise, directed where and to what or whom will be personal. That, by definition, carry our preference for relief and healing. Are the two at odds, or do they serve different purposes at different times? Petitionary prayers arise at that moment when the overwhelm has gripped the experience. That's the point where the petitionary prayer comes in. Thy will be done comes in just after that, in the point where we figure out how the solution will manifest. How will the divine solve the problem that it created this situation where it was pushing so hard into the material field that the material form itself started to buckle under the weight of that process. And now some kind of struggle or suffering is there. Now, how's it going to get back? So thy will be done comes in, I think, and this brings up, it kind of harkens back to the question about faith, hope, and trust, I believe, and also to the virtues. God bless the great Van Bingen. That we can sort of like isolate out different values that are supportive and helpful on the evolutionary path, like faith, as an example, because faith could also be kind of correlated a little bit with that idea of thy will be done, right? Like in order to supplicate oneself to, okay, thy will be done in this situation, one has to have faith that whatever happens is going to be somehow okay. Trust, that's a trust, actually. And so the principle here is that the solution, when it's carried by one's divine nature, the divine, when it's carried by the divine, the solution will often exceed expectations. But to get to that point requires some guidance from us. Oh, and this also, this is good. It also ties into that premise of bringing the impulse or whatever we're experiencing down to a fine, so fine you can't even recognize it anymore. That ultimately, the divine is creating this creation based on our response, right? Like the divine's like, oh, I'm just pushing forward and I'm just going to manifest as thickly and as completely as I can. And then we respond like, hey, wait a minute, that was overwhelming to me, right? And so at that point, the divine has to look and go, okay, I see I pushed a little bit to, there's a limit right there. I pushed a little bit too hard. So now I look deeply into that limit and how to solve and reestablish balance there. I'm just feeling it. There's a big shift happening in the heart energy center. So the divine does its push. We do our response. Our response is, this is not what I need. This is not good for me. This is not okay for me. And that's where the supplication comes in. That's where the point is. Now that supplication, this was the point I wanted to make that supplication, if it's at the material level, and it's like, just like, dang it, oh, this isn't working for me. If we get lost, in other words, the soul, the experience is already one of being kind of separated from wholeness and having gotten lost in the experience. So if the supplication comes as a lost experience, as the supplication comes and it's like, I don't even know where the divine is, kind of, it's like, just fix it, something like that. That supplication will not speak as loudly or be as well received or necessarily get the response that you're looking for, as if the vision of what the soul's aim in that particular experience or that particular healing process, if the aim is taken down, deep, to that place of suspension, breathless suspension, where you can't even define it. You can't even define it. Then you're speaking the universal language. Then you're speaking the language of the divine. That's the divine's language. Then you're speaking directly to the maker. So there are supplications and there are supplications, right? But even then, if you're like that did not work for me, okay, I'm going to take that in and just say, here's what me feeling comfortable looks like to me. Okay, divine. Okay, I got pushed a little bit too hard there. So this is what I'm looking at. This is how I'd like to feel. And it goes down to that very, very deep space. Speaking directly to the divine, speaking in the gap between the manifest and the unmanifest. Then thy will be done. Then, however the divine wants to bring that thing forth, so be it. And ideally, it brings it forth more and more aligned with your vision, which is now clear. That's one reason why I call it a divine dialogue, right? Because it goes around and back and forth between us and the creator. And we realize we are all that. All that is this. All this is that. Well, here's a question. Did the love you returned as sap, as the sap, the source? Source of creation it's a great question. It's a great question. So she's asking about this experience that I had where the awareness became very, very fine. And she's saying, is that source? Well, the quote that I mentioned yesterday was that the love in the heart of man is the shrine of the divine on earth. And I don't know if that's exactly word for word the quote, but the concept came from Maharishi. And that aspect of sweetness in our own hearts is where we anchor into the source of creation. But the source of creation is completely qualityless. If we go to the deepest level of that source of creation within us, we find no quality, no qualities. There's bliss. There's a kind of bliss. Seems to be a kind of bliss there. But even that, even there are levels of it that are beyond bliss. There are levels beyond bliss. So I would say, is it the source? I'd say if we go to the deepest, most expanded, most thoroughly unbounded level of the source of creation, I would say no. I would say that it's the relationship that the material field of creation, the universe, has with the source of creation is expressed in its purest form as love. Thank you for the amazing question. It's really beautiful. Really beautiful. I understand your explanation regarding being abandoned. Not about blaming, but understanding why. And she describes the death of both of her children. and how she misses especially her daughter. Yet she goes forward. At least they are together. This is what I was told. It's always really a lot harder for us. For those who are left back here on Earth, it's always harder. I'm getting something on this, but my friend who sent me this message, I feel that what I'm getting about this is extremely personal. And I would prefer to share it with you one-on-one than to share it here in our big group with hundreds of people. However, I can say that there probably isn't a single heart in this group that doesn't go out to you, because your children were amazing and they were beautiful. And they were young adults. She lost them both as young adults to different causes. So a few years apart. But those were the only children. There weren't any other children. There were only the two. So it's a huge, huge, huge loss, a huge life investment in children all the way up into their late 20s, early 30s. To lose them like that is just, I can't even imagine how difficult it is for a mother's heart. So I think what we want to do here is allow this moment of love to flow to you, to uplift and support your ability to process this experience. And then you and I need to talk one-on-one about that. And because I'm initiating, no charge, just a chat, a friendly, happy chat between the two of us. But I do have something I'd like to share with you about that. It's a little too intimate. Thank you, everyone, for holding a little space of love. She says she feels like she's no longer whole because she lost them. It's really rough. I'm looking for questions. He says, I think you just said something like, knowing that someone is available to you. I think you are saying an innate belief in your powers and divinity has a lot to do with your abilities as an energy healer, because you are then confident in creating the circumstances that allow the healing. Please expand on that, as it knocked my socks off and you barely touched on it. Okay, so let me see if I get this right again. What did I say? Well, what did I say? Knowing that something is available to you. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes, I know what I said. Okay. So it's like this metaphor. I used to teach music to little children, musical instruments. But the thing is, I used to say to them, if you know you have hands, I used to teach instruments. If you know you have hands, then oh, so many things you can do. But if you don't know you have hands, then oh, so many things you cannot do. So, so it's knowing this is a hand, this is what you do with it, that allows the little musicians and so to do their work, to dive into their musical work. And consciousness is a field of all possibilities. Infinite creativity is, and I'm just quoting Maharishi here, infinite creativity is the potential of the human mind and the human beings. Infinite creativity is our potential. So there's really nothing we can't do with consciousness. There's nothing we can't do. Well, I mean, I suppose if we extend the definition of consciousness all the way through the entire material field of creation. It really is a big field of all possibilities. But a lot of times there's a certain amount of cultural conditioning that we're all exposed to that disallows us to accept and recognize the potential of our consciousness. And so it's good to know that your consciousness has this ability. It's good to know, for example, that your consciousness has the ability to fathom into the source of creation. Like, that's useful. It's good to know that, because deep rest, right? You can attain very deep rest there. It's good to know that your awareness can become finer, 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 so fine that the original intention that brought you in, the thread that you were riding in on, is no longer even recognizable. Maybe it was an impulse of love and felt like love, and it felt like love, and it became more abstract and became more abstract. And then at some point, it didn't even feel like love anymore. It just was. It just is. It just is that breathless suspension. Like, that's an amazing thing to have that. Because you'll find that anything that you take into that level manifests according to divine will. And the universe is actually incredibly full. It's incredibly abundant. It's really amazing. Where are the links to be found? Yes, I shall put the links in the email that you will get after this workshop, webinar. I'll put them with the recordings of the webinar, and you'll receive today's recording and yesterday's recording and the links. The compassion for the mother part brought me to tears. Oh, I'm so glad. And this is from a mom too. Very interesting transition from grief of passing of loved ones, maybe overwhelming experience of love, to that same experience as the mother taking on the responsibility for guiding that incoming soul. Absolutely, absolutely. Because it's, we all know that the birth also can be an extremely emotional experience. And it's almost like there's some sort of emotional work that takes place anytime a soul passes across the veil. Can we do a healing for the necessary process of letting go of that sense of responsibility as the child matures? And we need to step back. Yes, yes, absolutely. And right after yours was a comment from the lady who lost her children. So it's very perfect. It's very perfect. That would be the fourth leg of Dharma, right? Is the letting go leg. And of course, again, it's one of those things where you have to let go, but you also have to, it has to happen. The letting go has to happen with neither excess nor deficiency. It has to be balanced. These three legs always have to come forth in a very, it's like the truth, you can be a little more loosey-goosey with it because the truth is just good. But these three, we have to be very delicate and very careful. I'm looking. It seems to me that there are even times where the letting go is almost like a bit severe, or it seems dispassionate. That the letting go has to be a bit dispassionate because it's a big, dangerous, scary world out there. But a child has to go out into that big, scary, dangerous world. Like, that's their job. That's their job. And the alternative is worse, which is staying home, living in mama's basement for the rest of their lives. So that's where a lot of trust comes in, and delicacy of timing is also part of the balance there, because the child should go out. The child needs to do what they need to do, but they can do it under conditions or within a context that is where they have the resources that they need and they have the facility to follow through and so like that. Or they can be kind of thrust out in a really kind of unstable way into situations and circumstances that could overwhelm them. Essentially, that's it, is that what the mother really wants is she wants the child to be able to go out into the world and do their thing and to be a grown-up, but to do it in a way where the context, in a context that allows them to not become so overwhelmed that they lose their ability to function effectively. I'm just looking at that balance. So balance, I would say, would be and I can't remember if Hildegard even mentioned balance. I don't think she did as one of the virtues, but from my perspective, in my book, it is one of balance is a virtue. It's kind of like the virtue that balances all the other virtues. Balance. And a balance of setting boundaries, right? All the boundaries have to be set in a balanced manner. So the child knows you go out and then you can't come back across this, you don't cross back that line. There's a lot of, I think another side of that is to follow the setting of the boundaries with gratitude and forgiveness. Gratitude, one can only be grateful to a child who's capable of stepping out into the world and functioning effectively. That's really nice when that happens. And by the way, our friend who lost her 2 children, they had done that. Her children were incredible, incredibly effective, incredibly functional. Balance. This is what we need. I push you so much, but in a balanced way. You know, when you're so young, you can still come back, but at some point you don't come back, something like that. Or maybe always there's some coming back, but it's within some constraints, some boundaries. You can come back, but you got to pull your weight. They should be pulling their weight from the beginning, I think. Whatever weight they're capable of pulling. And they want to. It makes life meaningful to be engaged. So they're pulling the weight. I think the word pulling the weight, it contains an energetic that's got a download in it that's necessary for that healing. Because they're creating the weight themselves. Their soul created that weight. And anywhere that weight shows up to be burdening you, that's where the line needs to be drawn in a balanced manner. I'm just feeling it, the shifting and the adapting, like reformulating priorities, and not very much though. I think you've mostly got it. But for all the mamas in the audience today and everybody, thank you. Thank you everyone for being with me today. It's been really sweet to be here, and I'm looking at our time yet. We're just a little bit over, and I like to be as respectful as possible. Thank you, everyone. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye. See you next month.